Friends, welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. You will not believe that such an insignificant thing as one letter of the alphabet can make such a big difference. But it all depends on the context. One evening, I was sitting at our table and looking through my daughter Katie's medical forms. Katie was going to kindergarten, so the pediatrician gave her a full examination, and my wife left the forms for school lying on the table. Idly glancing at him, I saw the letter that ended my marriage. The column blood type read A. I froze for about 10 seconds, a minute, I have no idea. Then I went to the closet and pulled out 2 sheets of paper from our medical records. Everything was exactly as I remembered it. Last summer, my wife and I donated blood to the Red Cross, which gave each of us a receipt indicating the blood type. Here it is, on 2 sheets, mine B, hers O. So there was no way Katie could be my daughter. If my wife was her mother, and I saw Marie give birth to her, then someone with type A should have been the father. The children were already asleep. Marie was upstairs watching TV. I took a beer out of the fridge and sat in the backyard, thinking, how was my marriage? I would say, good. Pretty typical. Both good and bad. It depends on what you ask. When we were dating and in the first months of our marriage, Marie and I were passionately in love. We made love all the time, sometimes madly, and even outside of bed we were constantly touching each other. Holding hands, walking hand in hand, stroking each other's neck or back as we passed by. Of course, after a while she faded away. Isn't that what happens in every marriage? But now that the proof of her infidelity had hit me right between the eyes, everything I'd ever thought about our marriage was on the verge of breaking down. I sat and thought, has it changed gradually or suddenly? It seemed like both of them. For a while, the slowdown in our love life was gradual. But about 6 years ago, that is, a few months before Katie was conceived, there were some strange months. Marie, my open, loving wife, behaved very strangely. One evening, she returned from work quite late, allowed me to kiss her gently for a short time, immediately went to the shower and avoided me for the rest of the evening. The next morning was the same, cold and brusque, but that night she was completely different. She came home early, cooked a special dinner, put me to bed early and lovingly used me half to death. We hugged happily before going to bed, and Marie told me how much she loves me. We made love a few more times this week. Then soon the cold night was repeated. She returned late from work, did not say a word to me, and quickly took a shower. For the next 2 months, I hardly knew who I married. Marie was passionate and loving. Marie was cold. Marie was attentive. Marie was distant and preoccupied. Marie was patient. Marie was obnoxious and short-tempered. I asked her several times if anything had happened, if something between us bothered her, if there were any problems at work. But all I got in response was, I don't know, Bill. I guess I'm just a little nervous. I'm sorry. When things finally got back to normal after 3 months or so, it turned out to be much less pleasant than at the beginning of our marriage. Marie became less moody, but she was almost never sweet and loving anymore. And her interest in love seemed to have disappeared. We made love no more than once a week, sometimes no more than once every 2 weeks, and only when I asked quite firmly. Any tender request, for example, maybe we could fool around tonight? It was met with a sharp refusal. I had to seriously point out how long it had been since we had done this. Then Marie would make love to me, but in a way that made it clear that she was just doing me a favor. Do all marriages follow such a sad pattern? It was the only marriage I knew well, so I couldn't tell. Of course, I was wondering what was going on, and my thoughts included the possibility of an affair. But soon after that, Marie became pregnant, and our shared excitement about the unborn child and the joy of having our wonderful Katie pushed most of my worries about our marriage out of my mind. After Katie was born, Marie and I were constantly tired, so her lack of interest in love was easier to understand, although I still wasn't happy about it. And when Katie turned 3, Marie got pregnant again, and we gave birth to Brian right after Katie's 4th birthday. So Bill and Mary, lovers and spouses, turned into Bill and Marie, the parents of 2 wonderful, exhausting children. We both adored our children, and although I now realize that I was deeply unhappy about the state of our marriage and our actual lack of a love life, didn't consciously realize it at the time. And if so, then I just decided that all couples with young children go through this. Now, armed with the shocking knowledge that my daughter wasn't mine, the events of 6 years ago didn't seem so mysterious. Marie must have started an affair around then. That explained the cold and the sudden rush to the shower. The passionate love and warm affection in the following days could be attributed to guilt or even, if I was merciful, to the determination to keep her marriage happy by continuing the affair. As I sat in the courtyard, watching the darkness descend and the stars grow brighter, my inner shock gave way to a growing anger. My loving wife not only cuckolded me, but also gave me someone else's child to raise. And maybe not just one. Maybe Brian wasn't mine either. If at that moment I had only thought about punishing Marie, I would have broken into the house, presented her with proof of her blood type, forced her to confess and threw the lying woman out into the street. But it was difficult. I adored my children, regardless of whether they were biologically mine or not. If we get divorced, Marie will surely get sole custody as soon as it turns out that they are not mine. I sat and thought. I asked the question, what do I want? And the answers were surprisingly clear. First of all, I want to know exactly what Marie did. Was it a short novel? Doesn't she even know that Katie isn't my child? Or does she know everything and has been making love to some guy behind my back for years? And secondly, I want to raise my children as my own and never let them know that I'm not their father. Once I found out what my goals were, planning how to get there seemed surprisingly easy. I went back to the house and found cotton swabs. After entering each of the children's rooms, I carefully took a tampon from the inside of each of their cheeks, without waking them up, and wrapped each one separately. I gave Katie a 2 and Brian a 3. Then he went down to the kitchen, put a tampon to his cheek, and marked it with a 1. I had a friend who worked in a chemistry lab at the university, and I arranged for him to test the DNA for me. This was the first step, the beginning of collecting information. When I got my first response, I knew what I was going to do next. A week later, my friend called me. He didn't know whose samples they were. I told him that I had met people with the same surname, and we were trying to find out if we were distant relatives. "Hi, Bill," he said. "Your 2 and 3 are definitely related. They are brothers and sisters. But your 1 is not related to any of them. I think these people aren't your cousins after all." I thanked him and hung up. So Katie and Brian were brother and sister, meaning they had parents in common. Marie gave birth to 2 children with this mysterious jerk. But did she know about it? Obviously, she knew she was sleeping with this guy. But did she know that he was the father of our children? There was an easy way to find out. I went to the kitchen where Marie was washing the dishes. "Honey, I want to ask you something," I began. Without turning around, she told me to go ahead, and I continued. "My work colleague has a biologist friend who is doing some DNA research, and he needs samples from people who are related. I told him that I would take swabs from you, from me, and from each of the children. Now I'm going to take care of each of the children before going to bed, and then you and I will take care of ours later, okay?" I watched Marie very carefully as I told my story. Halfway there, she tensed and almost dropped the pan she was washing. Then she came to her senses and continued to wash. When I finished speaking, there was silence for a minute, and then she turned around and looked at me. "I'm not sure I like this idea, Bill. How do we know what this biologist is going to do with the samples? Or will our information be kept secret?" I started to disagree with her, but she literally bumped into me. "No, I'm just not thrilled with the idea. Please tell your colleague that we don't want to participate." "Okay, honey," I said softly. "In any case, it's okay." Her reaction told me everything I needed to know. My next step was to find out everything I could about her affair or love affairs. Who, where, and when. Maybe even why. I wasn't sure about that, but it was possible that Marie had something hidden somewhere in the house that would give me a clue. But I need time to search everything thoroughly. That Saturday, we were going to go to her parents' house to spend the afternoon there. A few minutes before we were supposed to leave, I went into the bedroom, called us at home on my cell phone, then picked up the phone and pretended to be talking to my boss from work. When I was done, I went over to Marie. "Honey, I'm really sorry. There is a crisis at work, and today they absolutely need me, at least for 4 hours. Otherwise, the company will have serious problems. Damn it, Bill. My parents are looking forward to meeting the kids." "I know. I said soothingly. I'm really sorry. You go ahead, just offer my apologies. You and the kids will have a good time, and I'll cook myself dinner, and I'll see you tonight. She accepted this change in her plans without further objection and was soon sitting in the car with the children. Now I had several hours to systematically search the house. I decided that there was not much point in looking in the house, in places where I usually go, since Marie is unlikely to hide anything there. So I missed the kitchen, the bookshelves in the living room, etc. I also ignored my bedroom and bathroom parts, but carefully checked all her closet parts and dresser drawers. All that surprised me, there was a pair of very attractive underwear items that I had never seen her wearing. They were hidden far away in a far corner, under everyday things, so she didn't want me to know about them. Only the children's rooms and the attic remained. Deciding that children's rooms were less likely, I climbed into the attic. There were various old and long-forgotten pieces of furniture, a couple of lamps, and several boxes with books and things that dated back to before our wedding. It was too much to check, so I looked around carefully first. I noticed that one of the 3 boxes on the side looked less dusty than the others. Looking at them more closely, I saw that they had been lifted and moved quite recently than the rest of the attic junk, which had apparently not been touched for years. So I devoted my attention to these 3 boxes and found everything I was looking for. It was all Marie's old stuff, mostly letters from friends and buddies from college days. In addition, I found a bundle of letters and souvenirs from myself, sugary greeting cards, something like that. Quite far away at the bottom of one of the boxes, obviously intended to be hidden by old papers, lay a thin bundle of more recent notes and 2 videotapes. I pulled them out. The tapes were unlabeled. The notes were from Harry, and they were brief but frankly loving. I took the tapes and videotapes downstairs to take a closer look. 20 minutes with a stack of notes told me almost everything I needed to know. Marie was making love to Harry, her boss in the office where she worked. The affair began, it seemed to me, about 3 months before Katie's conception, just at a time when Marie was behaving so strangely and erratically at home. All the notes were from Harry to Marie, and they were rude and strong. There was no love in them, but there was a lot of lust. From the very beginning, the relationship seemed almost dominant, submissive, and Harry commanded them. Some notes told her how to dress for a certain occasion, to come to work without panties on a certain day, or to wear an attractive t-shirt under her blouse. In others, he described how he would use her the next time they stayed late at work, or ordered her to come to his office the next day at 10 a.m., take off all her clothes, and make him feel good. A couple of notes congratulated her on the birth of their children and contemptuously called me a poor fool who, unknowingly, was raising them for him. It was clear that he did not intend to declare his children. I knew that he was happily married to a lovely woman named Caroline, and they had 3 children of their own. Apparently, Caroline was as unaware of his affair as I was. My jaw clenched as I read. It was clear that Harry was dominating Marie, but she agreed to it voluntarily. There was no hint of blackmail. She seemed to enjoy playing the role of a fallen woman for him and getting directions on what to do. Besides, it was obvious that they both knew who the father of Marie's 2 children was, and it seemed that both of them enjoyed the secret knowledge they had over me. I couldn't find out anything about Marie from these notes, but now there was no doubt that she had been fooling me for more than 6 years and deliberately had children with another man, pretending to be my loving wife. One note made it clear that Harry had ordered Marie to cut me off from making love. She hadn't fully complied, and he was angry about it. He wrote, "I agreed to let you use your loser husband once a week so he wouldn't suspect anything. But you seemed to make love to him twice last week. That's why I'm punishing you. You can't use it again for 2 weeks. During this time, you have to make me feel good every other day, and you won't get a finish from me during this time. If you don't do what I tell you, you will lose access to my organ forever." I've been full of anger for days now, but these notes have brought it to a boil. My plans for revenge on Marie should have included Harry as well. I thought about it for a while, then took the tapes to the VCR and started watching. Both were recorded on tape where Harry and Marie were making love. The earlier one, judging by Marie's haircut, was taken in a room I didn't recognize, possibly in Harry's house. A fresher one was made in my own bedroom. I wonder when Marie had the opportunity, and it occurred to me that I had had several business trips over the past year, and maybe she had left the children with their parents. In general, The tone of the recordings confirmed Harry's amorous dominance over Marie and her passionate willingness to obey. The lighting wasn't as bright, although they were both clearly distinguishable, but the sound was surprisingly good, and I could hear every word, every groan and groan. I was sad to see that Marie clearly enjoyed the treatment she was receiving. Her desire was obvious. While they were resting, he gave her some orders. Now that she was pregnant, it must have been Katie, she had to cut me off from making love. She objected that she had to use me from time to time, otherwise I would get suspicious. He reluctantly agreed that she could let me use it once a week. Then, recovering from the rest, he forced her to make him feel good again, and then put her on the bed on several pillows and used her. He wasn't even gentle, roughly inserting his fingers into her to loosen her up. When he inserted his own, I saw the expression of her pain, but he ignored it, moving vigorously and deeply. After a while, she seemed to relax, and Marie's pain gave way to the same desire and pleasure that I had seen earlier on film. The second film had almost the same love scenes, but some interesting new dialogues. They were lying on the bed, having just come from a fight 69. Mary asked Harry why he didn't mind that I was raising his children, and he replied, "Bill is a pretty good guy, and according to you, he loves kids. I have 3 of them, and I have nothing else to worry about. If it wasn't for that," he continued, "I'd just tell you to leave it. What is he good for, besides changing diapers?" "That's not fair, Harry," Marie said. "Bill is a good and sweet man. He genuinely loved me and was a great breadwinner for me and the children. And that's why you've been letting me use but all these years, right?" She smiled at him and gave him a light slap on the arm. "You bastard, do you know that? You've never been as gentle and kind to me as Bill has been, and that's probably why you turn me on in a way he never has. Yes, baby, I'm treating you like a fallen woman. Now get on your knees and make me feel good until I get up again, and then I'll take your back door before I have to leave." When I finished watching both films, I sat down and thought about it. What arrogant assholes they both are. Not only to make these recordings, but also to be stupid enough to leave them and Harry's recordings where I could find them. My revenge will be total, and it will be on both of them. I used a scanner to scan each note to my hard drive. Then, using some fancy software that I borrowed from work for a project I was doing last summer, I converted each of the videotapes into a digital file on my hard drive so that I could return to them later to edit them. When I was done, I took the tapes to the trunk of my car, hiding them under the spare wheel. Finally, I cleaned up the attic, carefully putting everything in its place so that Marie would not guess that I was there. Over the next 2 weeks, I systematically made and implemented my plans. It was much easier for me than I expected to be completely fake towards Marie, to behave as if nothing unusual had happened. It occurred to me that she had been cheating on me for 6 years, so why should it be difficult for me to do the same with her? Therefore, I was sweet and loving, took care of the children, was affectionate with Marie, as before, and even asked her for love a couple of times. But I tried to do it carefully so that it would be easier for her to say no to me. I really had no desire to touch her ever again. An important day in Marie's life was approaching. She has been elected the new president of a key society, an important charitable foundation in our city, and will officially take office at a dinner where she will give a speech outlining the charity's plans for the coming year. Marie served on the board of the Key Society for 3 years, and her appointment as president was a great honor. She was nervous about her presentation and asked me to help make the PowerPoint part she planned to use. This was my golden opportunity. For a week or so, I worked with her every night, allowing her to show me her slides and other materials and organize them into a smooth presentation. She practiced it a few times in the month before her big night, and it always went well. At the same time, I made my own, completely different PowerPoint presentation, and it was ready to replace it. The night before dinner, I deleted Marie's file and put mine in its place. I also added a lock so that once the file starts working, she won't be able to disable it. All I had to do was make sure that Mary had invited Harry and his wife to dinner. I casually asked her. Yes, she said they would be there. That big night, I was as excited as Marie, although for other reasons. We arrived there early, and Marie, elegantly dressed in a black evening dress, looked amazing. I helped her set up her laptop and did a couple of tests to make sure it would play. We all enjoyed a good dinner and some introductory remarks. Then the outgoing president warmly introduced Marie, and she took the podium, looking shy but proud as everyone applauded. She started talking and launched the rower print file. At first, he behaved as she expected, showing photographs of key charity projects of the society, and then pie charts with income and expenses. Then, as I had planned, he suddenly changed the subject. First, there was a series of still photos. The frames that I selected from 2 videos of a couple making love in different poses. Some of the photos were a little dark, but the overall impression of 10 or 12 of them confirmed that they were Marie and Harry. In one photo, she was on her knees, making him feel good. In another, he was inside her while she stared at him with her mouth wide open with desire. Marie continued to talk about key social issues for several minutes. Then, noticing the sudden murmur of the audience, turned around and looked at the screen behind her. She gasped and with a sharp movement of her hand, knocked over a glass of water on the podium. For a moment she stood motionless, in complete shock. Then a bright red blush quickly covered her entire face and neck, and she began frantically pressing buttons on her laptop, desperately hoping that the file would stop playing. In the next one, they were lying on the bed together. "How are you going to stop Bill from finding out that I knocked you up? As long as I give him a little love from time to time, he won't suspect anything." And Harry said, "But not too much, baby. Your charm belongs to me." And he bent down and thrust his fingers roughly into her. There were 2 or 3 more clips of Harry and Marie making love, but by then everything was clear. Finally, the screen went blank. There was a commotion in the room. There was laughter and hooting from all the tables. Marie stood in complete shock and disbelief, too stunned at this moment to even be embarrassed. At the next table, Caroline, Harry's wife, took a vase of flowers, smashed it over Harry's head, and left the room. Amid the laughter and shouting, people gradually walked out of the ballroom, looking back at Marie, gesturing to each other as they reproduced the amazing scene. Surprisingly soon, Marie and I were left alone. She stood defeated and lost on the podium. I was sitting at a table 10 feet away from her, smiling broadly and looking up at her. Finally, she raised her eyes and looked at me with an expression of terrible sadness. "Bill, how could you do this to me? I thought you loved me." Under the circumstances, her question seemed funny to me. I burst into a burst of laughter and, still laughing, walked out the door.